All right, welcome to episode 1 of Shooting the Shit. Get it? It's a working title, don't worry. Today I'm talking about the shamanic roots of Tai Chi, Qigong, I guess Bagwazong too, and in general, Taoism. So, there's some pretty good evidence that what we think of today as Qigong, what we talk about as Qigong, that the oldest form that we can recognize, the oldest form that we have, ancient drawings of, that's written about, is the 5 Animal Qigong. So this links with the whole Taoist idea of the 5 elements, which you see that idea all over the world. The ancient Greeks literally thought the world was made of little pieces of these elements. So there's the earth element, which was little atoms that were square-shaped. There's the water element, which is little sphere-shaped atoms, and these all kind of collectively made the world. The Taoist view was a little more sort of about energy, perception, meaning, rather than actual physical components to reality. But anyway, so this oldest style of Qigong is these 5 animal Qigong sets where the practitioner will behave and move like a certain animal, inhabit them psychologically, in order to bring out these different qualities represented by these elements and these animals into our own body, into our own mind and spirit. And so this is pretty good evidence that Qigong actually originated from shamanism. So shamanism, if I want to call this shooting the shit, I better actually shoot. So shamanism, at least in the northern regions of the world, so pretty far away from the equator. The closer you get to the equator, the more shamanism has to do with plants, right? So we have the plant spirits, the plant medicines, the herbal medicines, the worship of the plant, the jungle, the kind of tropical, abundant plant life that is near the equator. But as you go further north and you get into the Great Plains and the giant herds of migrating mammals, the magic of the shaman tends to orient itself more around the power of animals. And if you're in the hippie world, we call these like totem animals, power animals, these kind of things. So the shaman would channel the spirits of various animals, and to them this was often very literal. Like literally, it's like the ghost of a jaguar would come into the shaman's body and inhabit the shaman, and the shaman is basically not even there anymore. Now it's this other spirit in the room performing this healing. But the thing that would usually happen is the shaman would start to move and literally dance like this animal. And this is not unheard of today with people using psychedelics, where if you take a strong enough dose, you will start to move in a way where you're not telling your body to move. There's some kind of energy, archetype, animal moving through you, and your body's just kind of following along with the pattern. A lot of people will find healing through this. And the theory is that Qigong basically developed as a way to systematize this process of channeling the spirit of an animal or the archetype of various animals into your body to take on its physiological and psychological qualities. Because as civilization got built up, people moved from hunter-gatherers to farming rice and building stone buildings. A lot of cultures noted that the power of the shamans started to decrease, right? And so it became harder to just find a shaman to do this healing for you. And it became more pragmatic for people to have this stuff written down, drawn, orally transmitted. How do you move your body to inhabit this animal's archetype? And that's what I think it is. I think maybe there is some truth to certain experiences where literally another soul comes into your body and moves you. But in my experience, what I've channeled is archetypes. So archetype means like our collective unconscious idea of what a certain personality trait is. For instance, like the jokester is an archetype. But animals themselves are archetypes in a certain way too. They're sort of a package of information about a certain way of perceiving and moving through the world. So for instance, the archetype of the cat, what that brings to mind is very different from the archetype of the dog, right? So in my own experience with psychedelics before I got into Qigong and the Taoist practices, I did have some experiences where I had a lot with the archetype of the monkey moving through me, connecting me largely to ancestral Qi. And I had a few experiences with the lion archetype, which was more to do with sexuality. But later on, as I got into meditation and Qigong moved away from psychedelics, I had a very interesting experience with an animal moving through me. Now this was actually this was right before I got into Qigong, and I'd been spending a few years doing meditation and yoga. So this is a very interesting story that I'll just share with you briefly now. That's basically, to me, illustrated that there is some objective reality to our psychic anatomy. And I'll explain a little more what that means in a second. So basically, what happened was I've been doing yoga and meditation for a few years, doing work with chakras, these energy centers through the center line of the body that the yogis are always talking about. And essentially, I was looking for a meditation retreat, couldn't really find one that allowed me to kind of do my own thing. And they all had their own kind of prepackaged formula of here's the yoga you do, here's the meditation you do. So I kind of just wanted to do my own thing. So I went on a 3-week camping trip. And on this camping trip, I'm waking up every morning with the sunrise, doing yoga, looking over the lake. I'm meditating all day, meditating under the stars at night. So I'm making a lot of progress in training my mind and my body. But the odd thing was, on this camping trip, this is in Ontario, Canada, where we have a lot of black bears. And at that time, that year, we had a drought. And so all the berries and the nuts and everything they would normally eat weren't coming up. And so the bears were coming into the campground to even more than usual, because they're always doing this, but even more than usual, they're coming in, breaking into people's cars, smashing their glass, and stealing their food out of their cars. And this was kind of freaky for me because my tent was right next to the path this one bear would take every single night to get into the campground. So I'd wake up in the middle of the night around 3 a.m. every night to the sound of this giant animal walking right past my head with a couple millimeters of tent fabric between me and it. And it's panting and slobbering and pretty freaky for me. And essentially, I was freaking out until one night, maybe a couple weeks into this, I'd really kind of built up my meditation muscles. I was really focused. And I'm walking home from the beach where I'd been kind of meditating under the stars. And I'm doing a walking meditation. So it's just, you basically just walk slowly. You feel your footsteps, you feel your breath. And I get into a trance. Everything slows down. My mind gets very quiet. And as I'm in that state, I pass one of the campsites the bear had ransacked the night before. And I just kind of witness in my mind my kind of typical reaction to that, this fear that wanted to come up. But because I was in this kind of trance state, I was just able to witness it. It passed and it was replaced with empathy for the bear and how hungry it was. And so in that empathy, my fear just totally dissolved. And instead what happened was I had a vision of myself becoming the bear. You can see I'm not very good. This is kind of a new hobby for me. Not very good yet, especially when I'm talking. Basically, I have this vision of my snout growing, this black fur grow all over me. I start to walk like the bear. Its energy is kind of moving through me. And I see this orb of golden light start to glow in my solar plexus. And it just feels like all my digestive juices start lighting up. I feel this energy burning and glowing warm here. And I see this field of golden light around me. I feel just strong and protected. And everything just slows down. And I feel my energy, my life force, go from my head, where I tend to hang out a lot of the time, and just kind of move down. Just my tendency to overthink just went down into my gut and became these gut instincts. Now this is really cool because later, now this experience kind of wore off pretty quickly, but it was pretty cool because I'd had a lot of digestive issues, and it seemed to kind of show me a type of energy I could harness to heal my gut and my digestion, heal my tendency to overthink and worry and be too pensive. But basically, the experience wore off. I went home, and I was in the middle of doing my yoga teacher training. So yoga was my real focus at that time. But right around the time that this happened, somebody introduced me to Qigong. And as I started studying Qigong and coming across their description of the energy body, one thing I found was that they had this description of what they called the earth center. And they described this as this area of gold light or yellow light at the solar plexus that powered up the pancreas and the stomach, powered up your digestion, and that when this center was in balance, you transformed overthinking into centeredness and gut intuition. And I thought, wow, this is so cool, because I literally experienced that without having read this. Now, to be fair, the yogis have a somewhat similar idea with the Manipura chakra, or the third chakra, which is at the solar plexus as well. They also represent this with yellow light. And it does have to do with digestion for them, but psychologically the traits are a little different. It's a little bit more about self-esteem, things like that. Oh, I forgot my bow. And then the really cool part was that the more I looked into it, I actually found that they were some of the oldest styles of Qigong. These 5 animal Qigong, where you use 5 different animals to connect to these 5 different elements, 5 different organ complexes. The one that they used, the animal that they used for the earth element and the stomach and this earth center was the bear. Now there's several different forms, and they'll use different animals depending which style you do. But the bear was one of these options to work on your stomach chi, your earth center. It kind of reminds me of the bear from the Jungle Book, Baloo. So he's talking about the bare necessities, right? Don't overthink it, don't worry, just kind of be centered and present with who you are and where you are. And that reminded me a lot of the lesson that I kind of transmitted from the bear. Now this gets even cooler, because about 2 months later, I'm on Vancouver Island, which is off the west coast of Canada, and I'm finishing up my yoga teacher training. And basically I'm making my way home. I just finished the training. And before I go to the airport, I kind of stop in the middle of nowhere because I just feel called to just take a walk through the fields and the woods and the mountains. And so I'm going out there, and I see this tall ridge with a pine tree at the top and an eagle circling over the pine tree. And it's about around sunset. And I just feel like I'm called to the top of this ridge. So I make my way up there. I go through the thorn bushes and the spider webs, and I make it to under this tree. And under the tree, there's all this nice, soft, green grass. And I lay down, and I'm watching the sunset, and I finally just relax, close my eyes, lay back. And I'm there in silence for a couple minutes before I hear somebody walking their dog. And I just think to myself, who is crazy enough to walk their dog through all these thorn bushes and spider webs? And I thought that was only me that was that crazy. And when it feels like, or sounds like the dog's just about to step on me, I look up, and it turns out it's a full-grown black bear, and it's literally, if it had taken one more step, it would have stepped on my leg. And I kind of jolt and freak out, and the bear jolts and freaks out, and we're both equally worried that the other's going to kill the other. And then he kind of turns tail and runs. And I just thought to myself, like, wow, the eagle calls me up here, the bear almost steps on me. That's got to be a sign that this is some kind of energy I need to work with. So that part's kind of just for entertainment. That was a pretty cool memory and story for me. But the point is that this whole shamanic tradition that Taoism comes from, that Qigong comes from, it's not unique to China. It's not unique to a culture. It's something, I think there's some sort of objective reality to our ability as human beings, as the descendants of monkeys, right, to mimic. And there's some power in mimicry. And that's what we find in Qigong when we're even pretending to be a tree, right? All these movements where we're contemplating the moon, reflecting on the lake, and all this nature imagery, or embodying a certain animal. That there's a power to this on our psychology, where what we're visualizing changes the quality of our mind, and then the quality of our mind changes our physiology. And so a lot of this can seem like fun, right? And just kind of, oh, there's pretty imagery that goes with the Qigong. It's kind of fun. We're pretending to be tigers and stuff. But I think there's also something more powerful behind that. And the more we practice and the more you kind of get into it, the stronger that effect becomes. So I hope you enjoyed that info. I know it wasn't like a super in-depth, scholarly, historical speech, but I thought the story was a good way of illustrating these origins of these practices. And if you like this video, remember to like, remember to subscribe if you haven't already, share it with your friends if you got friends who are into, you know, nerdy Taoist stuff or shamanism or anything like that. And I'd love to know what you think, or if you have any interesting stories like that about animals or anything like that that you want to share in the comments. I'd love to read your stories as well. Thanks for watching.